everybody. I'm going to imagine that you're all naked, and I'm going to feel a little less intimidated by the 500 faces that are staring at me. When Julian asked me to speak today, we knew that we didn't want me to talk about, blogging or how I became a blogger, because that stuff's kind of already out there on the internet, funnily enough. So I decided I wanted to talk about identity in the digital realm, because issues of anonymity, trolling, identity are such big topics. We all heard about Samantha Brick and not just her slight delusions, but the things people said about her that were so personal, so evil, and so rude, and the fact that people feel it's acceptable to behave like that on the internet. So tonight I'm going to talk about identity in the digital realm. And I actually rewrote part of my talk this morning because when I was reading the newspapers, clearly the FT, the Wall Street Journal, and then just the Daily Mail for some light relief, I'm sort of admitting to this in public, it was very apt given the headlines because this was in the Daily Mail today. Olympic gold medalist Rebecca Adlington announcing she is staying away from all social media during the London Olympics because of the huge volume of anonymous abuse that she's been receiving about her looks and weight on social media sites like Twitter. What she actually said was, "It is awful. Even if there are 10 nice comments, you get one. I've now given up. It upsets me. It makes me so angry. The comments are to do with how I look, which has nothing to do with my performance in the pool. It's just nasty comments about things I can't control. I can't help the way I look." This poor woman. How did we get to the point where one of our most illustrious Olympian sportswomen is being pilloried for her looks by anonymous critics? What is it about the nature of online that makes commentators feel that this kind of behavior is acceptable? Why do normal boundaries and social constraints disappear when a user is sat in front of their computer screen? It's clear that the majority of the bullies that roam the internet and the World Wide Web, because the two things obviously are slightly different, do so because they can operate under the cloak of anonymity. Essentially, the internet allows us all to create identities, sometimes multiple ones, which give both unlimited license and the ability to be whoever we want to be. I thought this New Yorker cartoon was particularly apt, and if you can't read it, it says, "Instead of creating life, I decided just to establish an online persona." I've personally been blogging for about 6 years now, having started my blog, LibertyLondonGirl.com, in 2006. I wrote it anonymously for 3 years before giving up my identity to the world at large. And I think that puts me in a good place to look at the subject of online identity, from egos to alter egos and the odd troll. Are online personas a reflection of reality, or are they something quite different? This manipulation of online identity is something that any online user comes across every day, because from the moment that we sign on to any site, we're creating an identity to show others. From the photos we choose as our avatars, here's my Twitter photo, because I chose this specifically to mask my identity, but to still give an impression of the kind of person I might be, glamorous, mysterious, all the rest of it. And then, of course, there are all the alternate personas that people create in parallel universes like Second Life or multiplayer games like World of Warcraft. But whatever we choose, we all make specific conscious decisions as to how other online users regard us. You've probably all seen this cartoon from the 1993. It's all over the internet. It's probably one of the most famous New Yorker cartoons now. And I thought this summed up the idea of identity so beautifully. And anyway, anonymity online isn't all bad. It can be an incredibly useful tool. It allows us to protect our identities and dip a toe in what can be sometimes, I think, a strange and intimidating world. It isn't all just cat videos and funny memes. I think being anonymous can be the online equivalent of riding a bike with stabilizers. The anonymous user can lurk, not participating, just watching, getting used to that brave new world of online. It can allow an anonymity can allow an online user to express thoughts and concepts that might not be popular with their family, their employers, the gay teenager who hasn't come out yet in a chat room, the left-leaning voter in a right-leaning workplace. There are plenty of reasons why anonymity and a way to express your opinions can be a good thing online. For me, I chose to be anonymous for so many years for several reasons. Given that I shared details of my life now, from what I ate for breakfast, which of course is the ultimate internet cliche, to my ongoing hatred of Virgin Media's piss-poor broadband service, I feel I have to get that in at every available opportunity. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll know this. And I do this across, at last count, 10 social media platforms. So knowing that I share my great breakfast, good cafe on Parkway, in Camden, I actually started off as an anonymous blogger because I was scared that I didn't have enough gravitas and that my reputation wasn't good enough to be seen as somebody with a defining opinion on anything, be it miniature wirehead dachshunds. Ah, here she is. This is my dog. The dog now gets fan mail from Japan, which is something I never quite realized when I started blogging. So yeah, I never expected that anybody would expect me to have a good opinion on things like dachshunds or maybe the correct hat to wear to a wedding in Manhattan, and I still don't know the answer to that. Chloe in the front row might, she's American. But I chose anonymity back then because I thought it would be detrimental to my career. Yeah, I know, stupid, right? But in the 6 intervening years since I launched LRG, the world has just changed so much. That concept of crowdsourcing opinion and the often justified belief in the credibility of the informed amateur has taken hold to such an enormous degree that we think nothing now of canvassing Twitter for recommendations or reading blogs by anyone and everyone because we know that everyone's opinion is valid these days. But back to this idea of identity. Until I gave up my identity, the #1 Google search term for Liberty London Girl was, who is a Liberty London Girl? And it's clear, I think, as a society that we are fascinated by this issue of identity, and the people that choose to hide theirs, particularly online, often become the focus of increasing and often unwelcome and unwarranted attention. As the media furores surrounding Belle de Jour showed, print media are obsessed with finding out who the voices are behind successful blogs and websites. For me, I would prefer to have stayed anonymous for much longer. I was very happy in my little bubble. But I had to because my hand was forced by the discovery that a broadsheet was sniffing around. So I very gleefully spiked them by colluding with British Grazia in February 2010 on a feature revealing all, and the identity of the dog as well, clearly. If you take someone like Zoe Margolis, who spoke yesterday, I think some of you are probably here, she's the author of the hugely successful Girl with the One Track Mind franchise. She wrote her sex blog under the pseudonym of Abby Lee, but that clearly wasn't acceptable behavior. She was hounded by the press, her family and friends pursued by prurient media, until her real identity was divulged in the pages of a national newspaper who behaved appallingly badly. She ended up having to change careers and take on a role to which she had never aspired. Of course, she's very successful and a great role model now, but it wasn't her choice. Creating a viable persona online is hard. If you give up everything, you're left naked, basically, a bit like we all in the audience right now. I've always had a rule with what I divulge, and it's interesting, when I spoke on a panel last week at Asia Fashion Exchange in Singapore, I made this throwaway comment, and it ripped around Twitter in seconds as if it was some huge revelation. It was essentially that my readers think I give them 80%, but actually they get 20%. Because I can't give away too much about my life because there are stalkers, and you have to be very, very, very careful. But as my public profile's risen with the success of LLG, it's become more and more important to me that I do keep back something for myself. And the appalling behavior of some people on the internet leaves me with no choice but to behave in that way. I've never told an untruth on Liberty London Girl, but I certainly choose very carefully what I choose to not say anymore. And so I have to accept that to a degree I am manipulating my identity. I don't think this in itself is a problematic issue. The problems arise when people manipulate their identity or create online personas to hide behind in order to provoke, bully, abuse, or inflame. I started this talk by referring to Rebecca Adlington and her persecution by online bullies. And this is obviously our friend the troll, of which there has been a huge amount of talk recently. I referred to Samantha Brick earlier. Trolls originally, 5-10 years ago, were considered to be people who were posting on particular forums and news groups. I think the definition of a troll has kind of changed in popular parlance now to mean somebody who is essentially offensive, unwelcome, stupid, or abusive. You can make a statement and somebody will just come back and say something utterly insane and call you a racist, sexist, bigot, homophobe. That, to me, is a definition of a troll. But I think it's also clear that humans have always wanted to make their opinions heard by using inflammatory language, inference, and wild accusations. Satire, for example, has historically been an extraordinary tool to challenge the status quo. Hogarth. I thought I'd choose the orgy as a little light entertainment. But in the 18th century, copies of engravings featuring social and political comment from the likes of Hogarth, Rowlandson, Gilroy were widely disseminated. They often offended many, many people, but they raised valid points about the moral climate of the day. And of course, in association with those, there were often the scurrilous, anonymous pamphleteers, who we could argue were the trolls of their days, aiming to cause maximum disruption in argument, often with directly targeted personal attacks. But the problem now is that where once a subject of a concerted campaign of denigration could literally stop their newspaper delivery, stick their fingers in their ears and go, la, 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 now you can't, because of the iniquity, the ubiquity of the internet and the media in the 21st century means that accusations, lies, and trolling campaigns spread like wildfire, whether they're true or not. And to me, most worryingly, is that where once the target of pamphlets and satirical engravings were the corrupt, the morally defunct, or the politically inept, at this point in the 21st century, it's women who dare to speak out about politics, current affairs, and, as Zoe discovered, their sexuality, who are targeted in the vilest way. As Suzanne Moore wrote recently, any woman who puts her head above the parapet gets lots of anonymous online abuse. It is personal, it is vile, and most of it I cannot repeat here. For me, myself, I experience this abuse every single day on Twitter. If I dare to comment on Syria, Marie Colvin, human rights, abortion, gay issues, things that are important to me and my friends and the world in which I live, I am attacked continuously by anonymous Twitter trolls who froth at the mouth that I have the temerity to have an opinion on anything other than cakes, homes, children, and great shoes. But frankly, I get off lightly. Newspaper columnists, especially female newspaper columnists whose work is disseminated online, like The Independent's Laurie Penny, are subjected to a level of online abuse that is frankly terrifying. This is what she said, that an opinion, it seems, is the short skirt of the internet. Having one and flaunting it is somehow asking an amorphous mass of almost entirely male keyboard bashers to tell you how they'd like to rape, kill, and urinate on you. And it's not just the columnists, of course. It's everyday female bloggers are subjected to these personal attacks on the way they look, think, and write. I'm pretty lucky on LLG because I post very few images of myself and I don't divulge much about my sex life or inner emotional life. Most trolls can't really be bothered to read me because it would take too much intellectual effort. But the problem with writing a personal blog, as I said before, means you're continually balancing this fine dividing line between divulging not enough and too much. If you take two of America's most successful mommy bloggers, who I'm sure some of you know, Heather Armstrong of Deuce or Ree Drummond from the Pioneer Women, entire industries have built up trying to debunk their lives. I think it's extraordinary. In Ree's case, she's built an online utopia about cowboys, children, people drinking milk, and her husband's bottom. And yet, there are countless websites out there, countless, if you Google them, all trying to prove that what she's doing is lies. And sometimes it seems as though women in particular can't win online. Divulge what the trolls think of as too much, like Zoe or Heather, and that knowledge will be used to take them down emotionally. Divulge too little, like Ree, and an entire industry will spring up dedicated to revealing the truth. If you're a woman and you show an opinion that reveals an engagement with the outside world, which shows capability, or an opinion in the political arena, you've overstepped the mark. Take an interest in the way you look? Then you're shallow. Ignore the way you look, and you're a slattern. Some would argue the only way forward is legislation, and I urge you to have a look at what they're doing in Arizona with Bill 2549. They're trying to use telephonic harassment laws to apply to abuse online. The problem is that it's fundamentally flawed because the bill is not limited to one-to-one communications, and therefore it could be seen as censorship. So what is the answer to the abuse that pours out of the internet from people who manipulate their identities to allow them to stalk, harass, threaten, and terrify others online? Clearly, we do not want or need censorship online. The blogosphere, Twitter, social media is an extraordinary tool for communication. Hell, without it, I wouldn't be standing here. And anonymity can be useful. Think of the Twitter users from the Arab Spring, for whom anonymity wasn't a choice. It was a protection from persecution. It is the anonymous troll who is the problem here. The danger lies in what sociologists are calling the online disinhibition effect, which Wiki describes as a concept of unwise and uninhibited behavior on the internet arising as a result of anonymity and audience gratification. We need to make sure that the anonymous trolls never get the oxygen they crave so badly. Block them, ignore them, report them, keep records, and maybe one day the internet will become a much more pleasant place for all of us who choose to enjoy it. Thank you.